Hey guys, welcome to YZ Out. My name is Siddhant Shekhar, and today we are continuing our discussion on STP, segmenting, targeting, and positioning. So, this is lecture 5, and today we are going to talk in length about targeting and positioning because we have already covered segmentation in the previous video. If you haven't checked it out, it will be linked in the description. Go and check it out, then come back to this. So now what's targeting? Targeting is making the decision as to which segments are the most lucrative given the value proposition, company's core competencies, etc. Now there are a lot more other factors as well. We'll talk about them later on. Now we have already looked at this graphic in the previous video, which says that in order for a segment to be profitable to a company, it needs to be measurable, substantial, accessible, differentiable, and actionable, which is true even when I'm deciding which segments to target, because these are the basic criteria, and no segment which does not fulfill all of these criteria can ever be a target for me. However, there are a lot of other additional criteria that I have to consider when I'm deciding upon my target segment, and I'll look at that in the coming slides. Now, what are the additional criteria over here? First is market growth, the size, the growth rate, the potential. Now, what this means is that I'm going to enter, let's say I have two markets, A and B. It makes more sense for me to enter a market which is growing as compared to a market which is already saturated and it's pretty mature. Now, why do I want to do that? For two or three reasons. A, the market size. If the market size is much larger, then it makes more sense for me to get into it because there's more money to be made there. Same goes for growth rate and potential. A market which is growing very quickly, it means a lot of new customers are coming into the market, and it's easier for me to acquire new customers because I don't have to shift them from an existing company, buy my own product. These are customers who are, so to speak, first time customers, and then it's much easier to acquire them with my product rather than getting them to convert. And last is obviously potential, which is to say where will my market be in 5 years from now or in 10 years from now. And a highly, a market with high potential is always a better bet for me, because I know that 5 years down the line, the investments that I've made right now, they will not go to waste, as I'll get a much higher cash flow coming in 10 years from now. A very good example would be, let's say, telecom industry. Now telecom industry is a very investment heavy industry. You have to build towers, you have to buy licenses, all of that. However, when it comes to a market like India, it has a lot of potential because of the number of people that are in India, the population of India, because which it becomes a very highly profitable market just because in terms of the potential of it. Second, competitive intensity. Now, it would, in an ideal world, I as a company would be the only firm operating in that particular segment. However, that's not really the case. We live in a free market economy, so there are multiple companies which are vying for the same set of customers. So therefore, as a company, it becomes a better decision for me to operate in a segment which has fewer competitors. Now, consider it this way. For example, oil and gas. Now, again, oil and gas is a very high intensity, a very highly investment intensive industry. However, I also know that there are very few competitors in that industry because the ease of entry is very low. It's very difficult to enter this market, and therefore it's a good investment opportunity for me because I know that there are few competitors that I need to deal with. A very good summary of this entire idea would be the Porter's five forces, which actually tells you how to judge the attractiveness of an industry. However, you can take the same concepts like, the threat of substitute, or, what other substitute products are, or what other alternative products are there in the market. All of these concepts also apply when making a targeting decision. And finally, then market access. Now, let's say I have a very good segment. However, the market is very inaccessible. Let's say I come up with a very high-end premium phone, but that market is already captured by a pre-existing player. So that market is very inaccessible to me because I have to go ahead and convert those customers from one company to my company, which makes the market inaccessible. So I'd prefer to go after first-time customers or customers who are already looking to change rather than trying to change customers, which is what market access means, which is, customer familiarity and things like access and company fit. Now, there are a few more considerations on top of this. Firstly, is the market compatible with the company's image? Now, let us say you are a very luxury and a very premium brand. Let's say you make pens that cost, I don't know, 10,000 rupees. In that case, if you are trying to enter the college market, where, people spend roughly 10 to 20 on at the max 50 rupees on a pen. If you're trying to enter that market, it does not go very well with your company's image, and you might even end up doing more harm to your company than good. So therefore, a very important consideration is that if you're trying to enter into a market, does that market go with your company's image? Say similarly, let's say you're a very uh, budget car manufacturer, and then all of a sudden you try to operate in the luxury segment. It's not really going to work out very well for you, because people are always going to associate your brand with your budget sensibilities, and therefore they will not trust, or they will not feel that pride that is associated with the luxury cars made by you. Secondly, does the organization have enough resources to target the segment successfully? Let's say you come up with a segment, you do a statistical analysis and everything, and you come up with a segment which is 150 million people strong. However, your marketing budget is just, let's say, $5 million. So in that case, it becomes very difficult for you to market to this segment properly, because your marketing budget is so small. And therefore it's very important for you to consider that, do you as an organization have enough resources to target the segment that you're going after or not successfully, because otherwise you might end up doing more harm again, because you picked up a segment, you drew your competitors' attention to it, but in the end, you are not able to capitalize on the first mover advantage that you had. Now, let's talk about positioning. Now, positioning is a favorite for a lot of people. It's a favorite topic for a lot of people because of how abstract and yet how creative and brilliant the problems in this category can be. Now, what is positioning? Positioning is the act of designing the company's offering and image to occupy a distinctive place in the minds of the target market. Now, for example, whenever I say the words, let's say iPhone, so the first image that comes into your mind is, a premium smartphone, or, the idea of creativity or innovation, or something as a status symbol. So what essentially is happening over here, that Apple, through its market communication and advertising, has occupied that position in your mind, where whenever you think of their product, that is what you think of, that is what you associate their product with, which is basically just the brilliance of the marketing and advertising team of Apple. And then why is it used? Now, this is used to distinguish products from other similar products offered by competitors. Now, let's say there are 5 different smartphone manufacturers in the market. However, all of them essentially have the same product, a smartphone. Then I, as a customer, how do I make that choice between these 5? I could go down to the features, but then I, as a layman customer, might not understand those features very well enough. So then the company simplifies that process for the customer by positioning its product as one particular thing. For example, you could think about mobile companies like Oppo and Vivo, who have tried to occupy the position of a camera phone, a smartphone with a very good camera. Now, it doesn't mean that it cannot do other things. You can't play videos on it or something. But what it means is that if a customer is looking for a phone with a very good camera, he or she would immediately think of Oppo or Vivo in the first place. Similarly, every industry and every player in every industry also does something of this sort, where they try to occupy a unique and a defensible position in the minds of the customer. Now, this is done by using communication and promotions, which would be ads, which could be offers, which could be marketing campaigns. It could be n number of things, depending upon the industry, the company, and the market, the target market, that is. So now, firstly, there's a very important tool when it comes to positioning, which is known as segment storyboarding. Now let's understand this, that what exactly is segment storyboarding. There are multiple segments whenever I'm releasing a product, especially in multi-market segmentation. Let's say I am trying to release a smartphone. However, I have multiple models, and these multiple models will cater to the needs of different sets or different markets. So in that case, what I would try to do is that create a storyboard, which is to say a story of sorts, that I will tell to the people that this is what my product is all about, and this is why, if these are the things that you are looking for, then my product is the product you need to buy. Now, because obviously different segments have different requirements from their products. A person who is looking for a low-end budget phone is going to look at the price of the phone, whereas a person who is looking to buy a luxury phone would look at the bells and whistles that come in a phone like that. And segment storyboarding is a technique that is used to create unique positions for each of the segments that appeal to them. So for example, now I'd ask you at this point to pause this video, go into the description box. There'll be 2 links for this slide. Go and watch those links. These are ads for a very famous energy drink in India, health drink in India. Go and watch those ads, and once you come back, then I'll discuss why exactly are these ads important. I hope that you have seen the video. If you haven't, I urge you that you seriously go and check out that video, because the rest of the lecture is not going to make a lot of sense until you watch them. So now, video one, what was it about? Video one was about a middle class or a lower middle class mother who was worried about her son's performance in school, and therefore she finds out that this health drink is being sold for a very nominal price for 20 rupees, and that is what is appealing to her, and this is why she goes for it. Now this is, this is the first storyboard, the first positioning that's happening in this segment. The product is the same. However, when it is being marketed to a segment which is middle class or lower middle class, then the position that they want to occupy is of low price, or it's of cost effectiveness, where it's just about 20 rupees. However, in the second video, which is about, someone who's a bit more well off, upper middle class or upper class, in that case, it becomes about performance. They don't talk about the price at all. Instead, they talk about how it helps to bring out the best in your child in terms of how they perform. Now, this, as you can see, it's the same product, but because it's being marketed to different segments, the positioning has changed very quickly. And this is, this is one of the most brilliant ad campaigns that was run back in the day. I'm thinking early 2000s and late 2000s. But then this really helps you to understand that how exactly can you use the storyboarding process to target different segments, and then tailor a message which is specifically created for that particular segment. Now this is one of my favorite examples to talk about. It's an example of shifting positions. Now what does it mean? Now, a lot of times when you are creating a product or a service, you'd want to have one solid position. But then as times change and people's preferences change, and as market segments change, you always have to end, you always end up having to change your positioning in the market. Now, in this case, I'm talking about the classic example of dairy milk. Now, when dairy milk was started, it was a chocolate, and back then chocolates was something that was meant for kids. Adults never used to eat it. It was something that was meant specifically for the kids. However, all of that changed when Dairy Milk ran its one of the biggest. Okay, so all of the links are in the description below. I hope that you'll go and check them out. I'll be talking about the ads in this one. If you don't know which ads I'm talking about, go and watch the video, then come back to this. Now, in the most iconic ever ads ever, the one with the cricket ground and the girl dancing in the field, for the first time, Dairy Milk projected itself as something that even adults can enjoy. There is not a single child in the entire video. It's a bunch of adults playing cricket. There are old people in the stands, and there's a very young woman who is having a chocolate. Now, this was something very new to the market. This was something which was very unheard of, that even adults can have and enjoy chocolates. In the second act, Dairy Milk went from a chocolate to the very famous Pappu Paas Ho Gaya ad featuring Amitabh Bachchan. In the second act, Dairy Milk went from a chocolate to something which was used to celebrate after a major event. Now, all of a sudden, it was something, back then it was about, you had it as a snack, or you had it, when you were out there with your friends, or when you got some money from relatives or whatever. All of a sudden, it tried to become the substitute of sweets. So whenever something big happens in, you pass an exam or whatever, you celebrate by having something sweet. And in this case, Dairy Milk tried to be that something sweet. And the third ad again features Richa Chadda and Jugal Hansraj before they were these big deals. In that ad, Dairy Milk is, it becomes a substitute of sweets that are exchanged at festivals. Again, brilliant move by them, and they are one of the market leaders now in terms of their celebrations package and the chocolate covered almonds and all of the products that they came out with. They basically created that entire trend or that entire segment where people gave chocolates on Rakhi and Diwali, which was absolutely unheard of before. And lastly, in the last ad, it tried to become an after meal dessert. So far it was like, a once or twice a year phenomena. You bought it on Rakhi, you bought it on Diwali on top of the snack. Now what they tried to do is that they tried to position it as an after the meal dessert, which means that, if you get people to do this, they'll be having it every day after their dinner or after their lunch. Now this means that, from someone who was an occasional or a sporadic user, you have got a user who is having it on an everyday basis, which is obviously a good thing for your company. The links are all in the description. If you want, you can go and check these ads out. However, what I want to draw your attention to over here is that positions, just like every other marketing strategy, can rarely stay constant. And this is the perfect way on how to evolve it and how to make sure that even when the essence and your product is the same, how you can position it differently to attract newer and bigger segments of the market to it. Now, what can be used for positioning? You can use attributes. These are, my price, my features, so on and so forth. This is something which is very common in laptops and mobiles. Price or quality, again, this is, one of the most used, one of the most used parameters for positioning, that you talk about your price or your quality. Second is competitors, where you focus on you and how you are different from a competitor. Very good example of this would be a brand called Bangur Cement, which talks about how it's not cheap, it's just the best, because they know that they are cheap, and then a lot of people associate being cheap with being bad. So they clearly clarify it, that saying that no, we are not bad, we are just cheap. Application, what is it used for? Product users and product class. Product users would be who exactly is the person or are the people using your product. For example, you would aim woodland shoes to someone who's very outgoing and very into hiking and adventure sports, whereas you would market something like a low budget retail clothing shop to someone who's very fashion conscious but still cannot afford to go to the bigger brands. And last is the product class, where you talk about, let's say, luxury cars or luxury watches or budget cars, depending upon which socioeconomic class are you targeting, and then how is your product suited to match them. And then how to position. Now, this is possibly the most important part of the positioning process. You start off by determining what your customers' perceptions are, not just about you, but also about your competitors. This gives you an idea that what is it that your customers value, and what is it that you should, or you are, what would be the best way to fight forward. Second, you identify your competitors' positioning, and then you determine the customer's preferences. You identified what is it that the competitors are using to sell their product, and then you identified what is it that your customers within your targeted segment, what exactly is it that they would like. Then you select a defensible position. What it means is that you should not select a position which is already occupied very strongly by your competitor. Instead, you try and occupy a position which is, which is slightly more unique, or it's something that other competitors haven't gotten to. And then once you have that, it's very important to defend that position and make sure that no competitor can hijack that position that you have. And lastly is the monitoring, of course, where it's a recursive process. So you keep on looking at the positioning, see if it's still profitable for you. If not, you change it like Dairy Milk and Cadbury did. And I think that's about it. Now, obviously, STP is a much, much broader topic. I've just given you the basics in it. If you want to follow it up, there are plenty of good textbooks out there, plenty of good case studies out there. You can go and look at them. And I hope that this gives you a good enough starting idea of the entire thing, it is entire idea and the entire process of STP. And I hope that you like the video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.